The day everyone laughed. I woke up that morning believing my life was finally changing. 5 years. That was how long I had worked without missing deadlines, without making excuses, and without asking for shortcuts. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed hard work always won. Looking back now, I realized I was wrong. As I adjusted my tie, Vanessa smiled at me from the kitchen. "You're leaving early?" she asked. I grinned. "Today's a promotion meeting." She walked over and straightened my collar. "I already know you'll get it. You sound very confident." "Because nobody works harder than you." I laughed. "When I become senior project manager, dinner is on me." She kissed my cheek. "I'll hold you to that." Those words stayed in my head all morning. I never imagined they would become the last happy words we shared. When I entered the office, everyone seemed unusually quiet. Mark from accounting gave me a strange look. "You okay?" I asked. He quickly looked away. "Yeah, sure." That wasn't normal. I reached my desk and opened my laptop. A company-wide email popped onto my screen. Mandatory executive meeting. Conference room A, attendance required. Asterisk, asterisk. I smiled. This must be it. I grabbed my notebook and headed upstairs. Vanessa was already outside the meeting room. "You nervous?" I asked. She folded her arms. "A little. I've waited 5 years for this. I'm sure everything will work out." Something about her voice felt cold. Before I could ask why, Richard Hale walked into the room. He wore his usual expensive suit and confident smile. Everyone inside. The room quickly filled. Nearly every department manager was there. Richard stood beside the projector. He looked directly at me. "Ethan." "Yes." "Please stay after the presentation." My heart raced. Maybe he wanted to congratulate me privately. The lights dimmed. Richard cleared his throat. "Before we discuss promotions, we have an important security issue." The room became silent. He pressed a button. A confidential company file appeared on the screen. This document was illegally copied from our private server. People whispered around the table. Richard continued. "Our investigation identified the employee responsible." I frowned. Who would steal company files? Richard looked directly into my eyes. "Ethan Brooks." For a second, I honestly thought he was joking. I laughed once. Good one. Nobody else laughed. Richard's face remained serious. "I wish it were a joke." "What?" "You stole confidential information." I stood up so quickly my chair almost fell. "That's impossible." He held up several printed papers. "The files were downloaded using your employee account." "My account?" "Yes." "I didn't do that." Richard slowly shook his head. "The evidence says otherwise." I looked around the room. Nobody spoke. Every pair of eyes was fixed on me. I turned toward Vanessa. "Say something." She looked away. "Vanessa?" She finally met my eyes. I don't know what to say. You know I would never do this." Silence. Then Richard spoke again. "Do you deny these records?" "Yes." "Do you deny your login credentials were used?" "Someone hacked my account." A manager scoffed. "Convenient excuse." I clenched my fists. "I've worked here for 5 years." Richard nodded. "And we're grateful. Then why would I suddenly steal company secrets?" He shrugged. "Maybe another company offered more money. I would never betray this company." Richard looked disappointed. "I hoped you'd tell the truth." "I am telling the truth." The room echoed with my voice. Still, nobody believed me. I looked at Vanessa again. "Please." She remained silent. "You know me." She took a slow breath. "The evidence is pretty clear, Ethan." Her words hit harder than anything Richard had said. "You don't believe me?" She hesitated for only a second. "I believe the company has to protect itself." I felt something inside me break. "Vanessa?" "I'm sorry." "No." My voice shook. "No, you're not." Richard nodded toward the door. "Security." 2 guards entered the room. One of them spoke politely. "Sir, we'll need your company ID. This is insane. Please cooperate." I looked around the room one last time. These people had celebrated birthdays with me. shared lunches, worked late nights beside me. Not one person stood up. Not one. As the guard reached for my badge, someone laughed. Then another. I turned. Vanessa covered her mouth, trying to hide a smile. Richard chuckled. A few others joined in. The sound echoed through the room. Every laugh felt like another piece of my life falling apart. I handed over my badge. I didn't do this. Nobody answered. One guard quietly said, "I'm sorry." I nodded. "I know this isn't your fault." He lowered his head. I packed a few things from my desk into a cardboard box. A family photo. A coffee mug Noah had given me. A notebook full of ideas that would never become projects. As I walked toward the elevator, people pretended to work. Nobody looked me in the eyes. Outside, rain poured from the dark sky. Within a single afternoon, I had lost my career, my reputation, the apartment I could no longer afford, and the woman I thought would become my wife. My phone rang. It was Noah. "Hey, big brother, how did the promotion go?" I couldn't answer. "Ethan?" My voice finally came out. "I lost everything." "What happened?" "They said I stole from the company." "What?" "That's impossible." "I know. Tell me where you are." "I'm outside the office." "Don't move." "I'm coming." I ended the call and stood in the rain. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. But deep inside, beneath the heartbreak and humiliation, one thought refused to die. I was innocent, and someday, no matter how long it took, I would prove it. Rock bottom has no mercy. 3 weeks. That was how long it took for my savings to disappear. I stared at the unpaid electricity bill lying on the kitchen table. Past due. The words looked bigger every time I read them. My phone buzzed. Another rejection email. I didn't even bother opening it. I already knew what it said. After careful consideration. Asterisk. We have decided to move forward with another candidate. Asterisk. Different company. Same answer. I dropped the phone onto the couch and rubbed my face. I didn't even get an interview. The apartment was silent until the front door opened. "Ethan?" Noah walked in carrying 2 grocery bags. He looked exhausted. Dark circles sat under his eyes. "You been out all day?" he asked. I nodded. 3 interviews. "How'd they go?" I forced a smile. They were short. His expression told me he already understood. They found out. They always do. Noah sighed and placed the groceries on the counter. "I hate this." "So do I." He pulled a chair beside me. "What happened this time?" The first manager smiled until he recognized my name. And then he closed my resume. What did he say? I laughed bitterly. "We don't hire people with integrity concerns." Noah slammed his hand on the table. "They didn't even let you explain?" "No." "What about the second company?" "The HR woman actually apologized." "That sounds better." "It wasn't." "What happened?" "She said, 'Personally, I believe everyone deserves a second chance, but our board won't approve your application.'" Noah shook his head. "They're treating you like a criminal." "I know." "And the third?" I stared at the window. The receptionist never even called me upstairs. Silence filled the room. Finally, Noah spoke. "You're innocent." "I know." "Then stop looking like you've already lost." "I didn't lose a job, Noah." He looked at me quietly. "I lost my name." He didn't answer, because he knew I was right. That evening I opened my laptop again. 37 applications. 37 rejections. I clicked another job listing. Project manager. Perfect match. I uploaded my resume. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Hello? Mr. Brooks?" "Yes." "This is Karen from Horizon Systems. Thank you for calling." I'll be honest. My heart sank. "We searched your employment history." I closed my eyes. "I understand. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Another door closed. The next morning, my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a recruiter. It was a social media notification. I almost ignored it. Instead, I opened the app. The first picture filled my screen. Vanessa, Richard, luxury restaurant, both smiling. The caption read, Sometimes life removes the wrong people so the right ones can find you. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Asterisk power couple. Asterisk. Asterisk. She definitely upgraded. Asterisk. Asterisk. Success looks good on both of you. Asterisk. I stared at the picture until my vision blurred. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then another photo appeared. Richard had his arm around her shoulders. She was wearing the necklace I had saved 6 months to buy. I whispered, so that's what I was worth. The apartment door opened. Noah stepped inside. He immediately noticed my face. What happened? I turned the phone toward him. His jaw tightened. He looked at the screen for only 2 seconds before locking it. Don't. I had to see it. No, you didn't. They're happy. They're pretending. You don't know that. I know people like them. I laughed quietly. I thought I knew her too. Noah pulled a chair beside me. Listen to me. I'm listening. People who kick someone when they're already on the ground eventually fall themselves. You really believe that? I do. I wish I still believed anything. He stood. Come eat. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since yesterday. I'm fine. No. His voice became firm. You're my brother. I don't want your money. I didn't offer money. I know why you've been working overtime. He looked away. You saw my schedule? I saw your pay stub. Silence. You shouldn't have to carry me. I'm not carrying you. You are. I'd work 20 hours a day before letting you sleep on the street. I couldn't answer, because my throat suddenly felt tight. He smiled faintly. You spent years helping me. I never kept score. Neither do I. For the first time in weeks, I realized I wasn't completely alone. Maybe I had lost almost everything, but I hadn't lost the one person who still believed in me. Building myself again. The first thing I noticed about Grace Turner's company was the silence. Not the uncomfortable kind, the focused kind. There were no expensive glass walls, no luxury furniture, no giant company logo hanging behind a reception desk. The office looked more like a shared workspace than the headquarters of a technology company. Grace smiled as she walked beside me. I know it isn't impressive. I looked around. I wasn't expecting impressive. What were you expecting? A second chance. She smiled a little wider. Good answer. She opened the conference room door. Everyone, this is Ethan Brooks. A few people looked up from their laptops. Some nodded politely. Others simply returned to work. Grace continued. I've hired Ethan as our new project manager. Before anyone could respond, a man in his 40s folded his arms. You hired him without asking me? Grace didn't flinch. I informed you yesterday, Daniel. Daniel looked directly at me. So you're Ethan? I am. The Ethan from Hale Technologies? Yes. The one who was fired for stealing company data? The room became quiet. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. Grace answered before I could. He wasn't fired because he was guilty. Daniel looked at her. You don't know that. I know enough. He turned back toward me. Then tell me. What? Did you do it? I looked him straight in the eyes. No. He didn't blink. Everyone says they're innocent. I'm not everyone. Silence filled the room. Finally, Daniel shrugged. I hope Grace is right. So do I? He walked toward the door before stopping beside me. One warning. I'm listening. We don't have money to waste. I understand. If you fail here, this company might not survive. I won't let that happen. He studied my face for another second before leaving. Grace let out a slow breath. Don't take that personally. I don't. He lost 2 major clients last year, so he trusts results more than promises. She smiled. You learn quickly. I had a very expensive lesson. For the first time since losing everything, someone didn't look at me with pity. Grace looked at me like she expected something from me. That felt different. And somehow, it felt better. My new desk was half the size of my old one. The computer was older. The software wasn't updated. The coffee machine barely worked. But nobody complained. Everyone simply worked. By noon, I had already reviewed 3 delayed projects. By evening, I had found 6 problems that could be fixed without spending another dollar. The next morning, I walked into Grace's office carrying a notebook. I think we can save 20% of our operating costs. She looked up. Already? I placed the notebook on her desk. We're paying 3 different companies for software that does the same job. She flipped through the pages. You checked all of this? I stayed late. You weren't asked to. I know. She looked at me for a long moment. Thank you. No. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Thank you for giving me a desk to stay late at. Her expression softened. I think you're going to fit here. A week later, Daniel stopped by my desk. I need 5 minutes. You've got them. He placed a file in front of me. This client is leaving. Why? They say our platform is too slow. I opened the reports. They're right. He raised an eyebrow. You agree with them? I do. Then what? I think they're blaming the wrong problem. He folded his arms. Explain. The platform isn't slow. What is it? The database keeps repeating unnecessary requests. He leaned closer. Can you prove it? Give me until tomorrow. You have until 8. That night, almost everyone went home. I stayed. When I finally looked at the clock, it was nearly midnight. The office lights were off except for mine. I heard footsteps. Grace walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. I thought I told everyone to go home. You did. She handed me a cup. So why are you still here? I finally have something worth protecting. She smiled quietly. You really needed this chance, didn't you? I needed someone to believe I deserved one. The next morning, Daniel arrived exactly at 8. Well, I turned my monitor toward him. The problem isn't the software. He stared at the graphs. It's the old server. He looked confused. We were about to spend $200,000 replacing the platform. We only need a new server. He remained silent. Then he asked one question. Are you sure? I'm willing to bet my job on it. 3 days later, the new server was installed. The client renewed their contract. Daniel walked over to my desk. I owe you an apology. For what? I judged you before I knew you. I probably would have done the same. He held out his hand. Let's start over. I shook it. Deal. For the first time since I had been thrown out of my old company, someone had earned my trust instead of demanding it. I was finally moving forward. I just didn't know that the past was already preparing to chase me again. The tables began to turn. 6 months. That was all it took for my life to begin looking completely different. The office that once struggled to pay salaries had become too small for our growing team. Every empty desk was now occupied. Whiteboards were filled with new projects. Investors who had ignored us before were suddenly asking for meetings. Sometimes I stood in the middle of the office just to remind myself this was real. Grace walked toward my desk carrying a folder. You've been staring at the team for 5 minutes. I smiled. I was remembering my first day. The day Daniel nearly scared you away. I thought he was going to throw me back onto the street. She laughed. He told me later he expected you to quit within a week. I almost did. But you didn't. No. I looked around the room. Because someone believed in me before I believed in myself. Grace placed a folder on my desk. Open it. I looked at her. What is it? Just open it. I flipped through the papers. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. Then my eyes stopped on one line. Chief Operations Officer. I looked back at her. What is this? It's your promotion. I blinked. Grace, you earned it. I've only been here 6 months. And you accomplished more in 6 months than most executives do in 6 years. I don't know what to say. She smiled. Try saying yes. I laughed quietly. Yes. She held out her hand. Congratulations, Ethan. I shook it. I won't disappoint you. I know. No. I looked at the promotion letter again. I never want this company to become the place that threw me away. Grace's smile faded into something more serious. It never will. That afternoon, Daniel walked into my office without knocking. I heard the news. You mean you approved it? He smirked. I did. I wasn't expecting that. You earned my respect. That means more than you think. He sat across from me. You remember our first conversation? I remember every word. I told you we couldn't afford mistakes. You did. I was wrong. I raised an eyebrow. About what? We couldn't afford to lose you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I smiled. I never thought I'd hear that from you. Don't get used to compliments. I won't. He stood up. We've got investors arriving in an hour. Then let's give them a reason to sign. He nodded once. That's the Ethan I hired. As he walked out, I couldn't help smiling. Not because I had been promoted, because someone who once doubted me now trusted me completely. That felt better than revenge. At least, for now, the man she tried to destroy. The first time Grace mentioned Arthur Coleman's investment group, I thought it was just another opportunity. I had no idea it would force me to face the people who had destroyed my life. Grace knocked on my office door. You've got a minute? Always. She stepped inside carrying a thick blue folder. We've officially been invited. Invited where? Arthur Coleman's headquarters. I leaned back in my chair. That's unexpected. She smiled. Not anymore. She slid the folder across my desk. They're interested in acquiring several technology companies. I opened it. Every page contained financial reports, market analysis, and acquisition plans. Then I saw one familiar company logo. My hand stopped. Hale Technologies. Grace watched my expression carefully. I thought you'd notice. I looked up. Richard's company? She nodded. They've been losing clients for months. I couldn't help letting out a quiet laugh. So Karma finally learned their address. Grace didn't laugh. Ethan, I know. This isn't personal. I met her eyes. It used to be. And now. I closed the folder. Now it's business. She smiled. That's exactly why I want you leading the negotiations. I blinked. Me? You've handled every major client this year. But this acquisition needs someone who understands both numbers and people. She folded her arms. And frankly, she smiled. I trust your judgment more than anyone else's. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because I was nervous. Because a few months ago, I couldn't even get someone to read my resume. Now, someone was asking me to represent an entire company. I won't let you down. I know you won't. 3 days later, I stood outside the largest conference room I'd entered since losing everything. Daniel adjusted his tie beside me. You okay? I've been in meetings before. Not like this. He wasn't wrong. Inside that room were executives from companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Arthur Coleman himself would be leading the acquisition. Daniel lowered his voice. You know who's attending from Hale Technologies? I can guess. Richard. I nodded once. And Vanessa. For just a second, old memories came rushing back. Rain, a cardboard box, laughter, security guards. Then I took a slow breath. Let's go. Daniel smiled. That's the answer I wanted. He opened the door. Every conversation stopped when we entered. Arthur Coleman stood and walked toward us. You must be Ethan Brooks. I shook his hand. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard impressive things. I've had excellent people to learn from. He laughed. Grace was right. About what? You don't let success make you arrogant. Before I could answer, the conference room door opened again. I looked up. Richard walked in first. Perfect suit, confident smile. The same smile he wore the day my career ended. Then Vanessa stepped in behind him. She was checking something on her phone. She hadn't seen me yet. Richard greeted Arthur. Mr. Coleman. Arthur nodded politely. Good morning. Richard finally turned. The moment our eyes met, his smile disappeared. Ethan. I stood slowly. Good morning, Richard. For the first time since I had known him, he looked completely speechless. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes landed on me. Then on the nameplate in front of my seat. Ethan Brooks, Chief Operations Officer. She froze. Her lips parted slightly. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, she whispered, You work here? I answered calmly. I do. Richard forced a smile. I heard you found another job. I did. I didn't realize. He looked around the room. It was his company. Arthur glanced between us. You've worked together before? Richard answered quickly. Years ago. I smiled. Yes, we certainly did. Arthur pointed toward the seats. Let's begin. Everyone sat down. I noticed Vanessa looking at me more than the presentation. She kept stealing nervous glances, as if trying to understand how the man she had laughed at was now sitting across the negotiation table. Arthur looked toward me. Ethan, would you begin? I stood and switched on the presentation. Of course. Every eye in the room turned toward me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the man being judged. I was the man asking the questions. And Richard knew it. Truth never stays buried. I barely slept after the acquisition meeting. Richard's face kept replaying in my mind. Not because I hated him anymore. Because, for the first time, I had seen fear in his eyes. The next morning, I arrived at my office earlier than usual. As I unlocked my door, my assistant stood up from her desk. Mr. Brooks? Morning, Lisa. A man has been waiting for you. For me? She nodded. He said his name is Michael Reed. My hand stopped on the doorknob. Michael? The HR director from Hale Technologies. My heartbeat quickened. Send him in. A minute later, Michael walked into my office, carrying a thick black briefcase. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. He closed the door behind him. Good morning, Ethan. I motioned toward the chair. Please sit. He remained standing. I owe you an apology before I say anything else. I frowned. For what? For staying silent. I looked at him carefully. You knew. I suspected. Suspected what? That you were innocent. Silence filled the room. I slowly leaned back. Then why didn't you say anything? He lowered his eyes. Because I was afraid. Afraid of Richard? He nodded. He had too much influence. Anyone who questioned him disappeared. I let out a slow breath. So, why are you here now? Without answering, he placed a briefcase on my desk. The locks clicked open. Inside were dozens of folders. What is all this? The truth. I stared at him. I spent almost 2 years collecting evidence. My throat tightened. What kind of evidence? Everything Richard tried to erase. He handed me the first folder. Start there. I opened it. My hands immediately began shaking. Email records, internal messages, security reports, system logs. Every page carried dates I knew by heart. Michael pointed toward one document. Read that email. I looked down. It was written by Richard. Use Ethan's employee account. Nobody will question him. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Michael quietly continued. He instructed the IT supervisor to copy confidential files using your login credentials. I looked at another page. What about these? Deleted server logs. They still exist? We recovered them from backups. Every line confirmed the same thing. Richard had planned everything. He hadn't framed me in a single afternoon. He had been preparing for weeks. I closed my eyes. So, my voice cracked. I really never had a chance. Michael answered softly. No. I looked at him again. Why give this to me now? Because Arthur Coleman ordered a full audit after yesterday's meeting. And I realized if I stayed silent again, he swallowed hard. I'd become just as guilty. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I stood up. I should hate you. I know. But if you hadn't brought this... I looked down at the files. The truth might have stayed buried forever. He nodded once. I'm ready to testify. You understand what that means? I'll probably lose my career. You could... He smiled sadly. I almost lost myself already. I reached across the desk. Thank you. He shook my hand. No. His voice trembled. I'm sorry. That afternoon, Arthur called an emergency executive meeting. Every senior manager attended. Richard walked into the room, looking confident. Vanessa followed a few steps behind him. She smiled politely when she saw me. I simply nodded. Arthur stood. We've completed an internal review. Richard adjusted his tie. Is there a problem? Arthur looked toward me. Ethan. I stood and placed the folders on the conference table. I'd like everyone to see something. Richard's smile disappeared. What is this? The truth. I opened the first file. Security records. The second, recovered emails. The third, financial reports. Richard interrupted. None of this proves anything. I looked directly at him. Really, I held up the printed email. Use Ethan's employee account. Nobody will question him. The room became silent. Richard's face turned pale. That's fake. Michael stood from the back of the room. No. Every head turned. I recovered myself. Richard stared at him. You. Michael continued. I also recovered the deleted server logs. Richard slammed both hands on the table. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Arthur looked toward the legal team. Continue. For the next hour, every lie Richard had built collapsed. The financial reports showed he had taken credit for projects I created. The emails proved he manipulated the investigation. The server logs proved my account had been accessed remotely. The audit revealed missing company funds. Every answer Richard gave only made things her biggest regret. The newspapers stopped calling me a thief. For the first time in years, people looked at me with respect instead of suspicion. But one thing surprised me. The apology I had wanted for so long didn't make me feel happy. It only reminded me how much everything had changed. 3 weeks after Richard's dismissal, my assistant knocked on my office door. Mr. Brooks? Come in. Lisa stepped inside. Someone is asking to see you. Who? She hesitated. Vanessa. I closed the file in front of me. Did she have an appointment? No. What did you tell her? That you're busy. And she said she'll wait. I looked through the glass wall toward the reception area. She was sitting alone. The confident woman who used to walk through every office like she owned the building now kept her eyes on the floor. I took a slow breath. Give me 5 minutes. When I stepped into the reception area, she immediately stood. Ethan. Hello, Vanessa. I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't. She nodded. I understand. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked, Can we talk? There are 10 minutes before my next meeting. That's enough. We walked into a small meeting room. She sat across from me. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. You look well. I've been working. I heard. Silence. Then she forced a weak smile. Congratulations. Thank you. You deserve everything you've achieved. I looked at her quietly. What do you really want to say? Her smile disappeared. I miss you. I didn't answer. I know I don't deserve another chance. No, I know. She lowered her head, but I had to tell you. I folded my hands on the table. Tell me what? That I was wrong. I waited. I thought success meant standing beside the strongest person. She laughed bitterly. I chose Richard because I believed he'd always win. And I didn't realize I was walking away from the only person who actually cared about me. Her voice trembled. I've thought about that day every night. So have I. She looked up. I wish I could erase it. I can't. I know. Another silence settled between us. Finally, she whispered, When security took your badge. She closed her eyes. I should have walked out with you. Yes. I should have believed you. Yes. I should have loved you more than my career. I leaned back, but you didn't. A tear rolled down her cheek. No. And that's why we're sitting on opposite sides of this table. She nodded without arguing. There was nothing left to defend. When the meeting ended, she stood slowly. Can I ask one question? You can. Is there any chance? She struggled to finish the sentence. That someday you'll love me again? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I answered honestly. I forgave you. Hope appeared in her eyes. Before she could speak, I continued. But forgiveness isn't the same as going back. Her shoulders fell. I understand. I hope one day you forgive yourself. She smiled through her tears. I don't think that'll be easy. It shouldn't be. She nodded once and quietly walked away. I watched the elevator doors close. For the first time since everything had happened, I didn't feel anger, only closure. Becoming her CEO. The announcement became official on a Monday morning. Arthur called me into his office, closed the door, and slid a single document across the table. I looked down. Chief Executive Officer. For several seconds, I simply stared at it. Arthur smiled. You've earned it. I looked up. Are you sure? I've spent 30 years building companies. He leaned back in his chair. I've learned one thing. What's that? Skills build profits. And character builds companies. I smiled. So this is really happening. It is. He stood and offered me his hand. Congratulations, Ethan. I shook it. Thank you. No. He laughed. Thank you for reminding this company what integrity looks like. An hour later, I walked toward the largest conference room in the building. Every employee from the newly acquired department was already seated. The room became completely silent the moment I entered. I recognized dozens of familiar faces. Some had watched me lose everything. Some had looked away. Some had laughed. And one person couldn't even lift her eyes from the table. Vanessa. I walked to the front of the room, placed my notebook on the podium, and smiled. Good morning, everyone. Nobody answered. The silence almost felt heavy enough to touch. I looked around the room. I know many of you expected today to be uncomfortable. A few people exchanged nervous glances. I imagine some of you believe this meeting is about revenge. Still silence. So let me make something clear. I rested both hands on the podium. I didn't accept this position to settle old scores. I looked across the room again. I accepted it to build a company where nobody has to fear injustice. Several employees slowly looked up. I know what it's like to lose everything because someone abused their power. The room remained quiet. I also know what it feels like when nobody believes you. I paused. That's why, from today forward, every person in this company will be judged by one thing. I looked directly at the team. Your work, not your past, not rumors, not friendships, not office politics. Your work. For the first time, I noticed shoulders beginning to relax. This company belongs to people who earn their place. I smiled. If you work honestly, you'll always have my respect. When the meeting ended, employees quietly stood and walked out. Nobody looked frightened anymore. They looked hopeful. That mattered far more to me. As I gathered my papers, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Ethan. I turned around. Vanessa was standing alone near the door. She looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Do you have a minute? I nodded once. I have a minute. She walked closer. I thought. She gave a weak smile. I thought you'd embarrass me. I know. I probably deserved it. I remained silent. She looked around the empty conference room. When I saw you standing at the front, she laughed quietly through her tears. I finally understood. Understood what? That you've already won. I folded my arms. This was never about winning. It wasn't. No, she frowned. Then why didn't you get even? I answered without thinking. Because someone once destroyed my life. She lowered her eyes. I know. And I refuse to become that person. She covered her face for a moment before speaking again. I spent years chasing promotions. I know. I chased expensive dinners. I know. I chased attention. Her voice trembled, and somewhere along the way, she looked into my eyes. I lost the only man who actually loved me. Neither of us spoke. She wiped away another tear. I've apologized so many times. You have. But I don't think you understand. What? I don't want your position. I don't want your money. I don't even want another chance. I waited. I just wish I could go back to the day you asked me to trust you. She smiled sadly. This time, she whispered, I would have walked out with you. Those words hurt, not because I believed them, because I believed she finally believed them herself. I nodded slowly. I accept your apology. She looked at me with hope. Then I quietly added, but my future doesn't include you. The hope disappeared from her face. She closed her eyes for a moment. I knew that would be her answer. It had to be. She nodded. I understand. She took one last look at me. I'm glad you found happiness. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her disappear beyond the glass doors. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to stop her. A gentle knock came from my office door later that afternoon. Emily stepped inside holding 2 cups of coffee. I figured CEOs still need caffeine. I laughed, especially CEOs. She handed me a cup. So, she looked around my new office. How does it feel? I walked toward the window overlooking the city. It feels strange. Good strange. The best kind. She stood beside me. What are you thinking about? I looked down at the streets far below. The day I stood outside my old office. The rainy day? I nodded. I thought my life had ended. And now, I smiled. Now I know it had just begun. Emily gently touched my arm. You built all this. I slowly shook my head. No. What do you mean? I built myself. For a long moment, we simply stood there watching the sunset paint the city gold. Years earlier, I had walked into the rain carrying nothing but a cardboard box and a broken heart. I believed I had lost everything. I was wrong. What I really lost was the life that was keeping me from becoming the man I was meant to be. My greatest victory was never becoming Vanessa's CEO. My greatest victory was becoming someone that betrayal could never break again.